Good morning, you beautiful people. Welcome back. Welcome to the second, technically first, real episode of Duck in Games, where we, as usual, go with game design and disregard business practices because they don't matter. We don't play in business practices, we play games, and game design is everything. So, let's think about it. Today we will discuss should you do extremely experimental controls to sell the system. What do I mean by sell the system? Let's just pretend you have the big corporation, you have that great innovative console that will blow out of the water every competitor. It's revolutionary device. It has a truly unique idea. You just point and tap directly into the screen and stuff happens. Revolutionary. Who ever done this before? Nobody did. And you need to sell this system somehow. How will you approach it? Like, you make the system. You made the screen that can be manipulated directly. You have buttons because backwards compatibility and so on. And it's amazing how many options do you have from here. You can go on and just make a game that sells just that point, that makes use of the most of this device. You can make people draw, you can make people constantly tap on the screen. You can do everything like that. Or there is a chance that you will do something else, like you can give players options. Like hardcore players can do something like controlling everything with the buttons with occasionally tapping and drawing on screen. Or maybe even the third option. How about we just get ourselves some nice new genre where you just tap the screen and everything happens. It's just like a clicker, but the tapper. Something like that. Maybe Solitaire will do, maybe Minesweeper, something similar to the selling point of Windows 3.0 with mouse support. Now, since we all made our decisions, let's see what Nintendo did with the Nintendo DS. They have released the Phantom Hourglass with a very weird control scheme. The Phantom Hourglass is the Zelda game that technically is an RPG. Technically. Twitch thinks that it's a stealth action game. So the Phantom Hourglass, the Zelda game is something more of a Metal Gear Solid or Assassin's Creed, something like that, Well, Zelda game, usual stuff. Not an RPG at all. Of course it should be an RPG. But who cares? Nintendo made us do everything with the stylus. Nintendo needed to make a point of this game. They needed to sell as much consoles as they can. And they needed to justify having the touchscreen. Well, it's just my assumption because this control scheme doesn't add anything to the gameplay. When you use the same control scheme tapping the screen to move, to jump, to attack, to roll, to draw everything, it's not very useful. It can be a bit convoluted. Like, it's really, really useful. It can be really useful. It is really useful at some points. The points are when you need to draw something on the map, this system is a blessing. When you need to remember something from the previous island, when you go to the next island, this system is a true blessing. You can just switch to your map, draw what you need there, and boom, you have everything sorted out. You don't need any additional notes, just the system. Isn't it wonderful? Yes, it is wonderful. It's great. But at some point, it's very, very bad. Like, I mean, literally, it's not like a arguably bad. No, it was just a plain old bad decision. Imagine the situation. You have a very limited space, the arena where you fight a boss. During this fight, you can draw stuff and the boss will be stopped with a vulnerable point exposed, so you can do several blows. Now imagine when you try to draw stuff, your protagonist also walks. And when you draw stuff, he can walk closer to boss, farther from boss, and you cannot technically control it because drawing and walking is just the same movement. Just tapping the stylus, nothing more. And at this point, you have to ask yourself, was it really worth it? Was it really worth it to make movement controlled by tapping the screen? When you have a full-on D-pad, when you have shoulder buttons, when you have 4 function buttons, is it really necessary to make movement controlled by tapping stylus? I would suggest that it's not the perfect way to execute your selling point of your system. It's the way. Definitely it is the way. You can do it. Nintendo did it. Nintendo DS is still a great system. It can be fun to play. It can be definitely fun to play, but it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth burying the technically not a bad game, Phantom Hourglass. Burying it under the terrible control scheme. And by terrible, I do mean terrible. Imagine having the same controls, but on your mobile phone, you have your finger. And with your finger, you don't have any virtual buttons. You just have your finger. You just get around your phone and like, oh, hey, I can tap and the hero will go there. I can tap and hero will go there. I can draw something and a hero will walk around and then something will happen because, I don't know, the pattern will be recognized as some kind of symbol. Soon you will just think, hey, this game is quite casual. Do I really want to know what is going to happen? Do I really need to endure these controls, or would it be better if I could just plug in the controller and play the same game? Knowing by the sales of Deus Ex The Fall, you would rather plug in the controller and do everything you need. Because the game did a decent start on the mobile platforms, and it had like a second birth when it came to Steam. The game was suddenly playable. You could just use mouse. You could just use everything you want because you can. You're not limited to just tapping a screen. And imagine having the mouse and just choosing to tap on screen. This is a deliberate choice. This is a deliberate bad choice. This is a deliberate marketing choice because it takes away from the game design. It takes away from the variety of ways this game could be played. You could do hardcore runs. You could do speedrunning and stuff, but tapping and moving, it doesn't exactly scream, hardcore gamers unite. No, it's not. It usually screams something like, hey, we have this cool new feature, why don't you take a look at it and try it, and maybe you will like it even, hey! Yeah, I took a look at it. I can definitely say that this system, would it be optional, sometime I would use it. I would definitely try it, because this is an innovation. Before that, before Nintendo DS introduced this system, I could only dream of it. I saw the PDAs with the Windows Mobile and everything there was controlled by stylus tapping. And now Nintendo DS, they did the same. Imagine the possibilities. All the cool games, all the cool control schemes. Wow, we should totally try it. If it was optional. But it was mandatory, and since it was mandatory, it flopped. The game could have been classic. It flopped. And knowing this, knowing that this game could have been good, consider the insane truly insane and inconsistent learning and difficulty curves. You have island with the explanation for 2-year-old player. Like, you literally just found a thing. Appears a fairy. Fairy tells, hey, you have found a thing. Even though literally 5 minutes before that, you knew that you need to find a thing. So, is it a game that targeted at a younger audience? Not at all. Of course it's not. It's a Nintendo. It targets everybody. Because at the time when you come to the boss battle, this game will whoop your bum. It will tear you a new one. Sometimes you will have to endure boss battles for several times, because you may have some understanding of what do you need to do with a boss battle, but you may not know how to execute it properly. With the final boss, I know a guy who had to look for the walkthrough somewhere on the internet to know how to beat this final boss. For the Hydro boss, myself, I had this experience. I couldn't imagine what do I need to do. I made some kind of preparations, I made some kind of contraptions, but what I needed to do, I needed to look at the contraption I made, understand that I need to make a contraption that will reflect the projectile a certain way. So it's not just a build contraption, like you would expect a game for 2-year-old to make. Not just, hey, how about we make some fun little contraption? No. This is like, you have to understand it. You have to get yourself an idea on how to make it, and then execute it perfectly, several times. Only then you will beat the boss. And after you beat this boss, what do you get? More game about 2-year-old players. Like, hey, we found a thing. Yes, we did a boss battle to find this thing. What do you expect to find? Another thing? Another thing at all? And the control scheme would be much less frustrating if it was optional. Or at least if it was executed on a different genre of game. Like a cooking simulator. Overcooked. Great game. Could have done with this control scheme. No. We had to do with the Zelda. We had to do with the RPG. We had to do with the action RPG. Not really awesome decision. Not at all. As a conclusion of this episode, Nintendo did their thing. They tried to innovate. They did some progress in it. They did some bad decisions there. But they tried to innovate. And for that only, we can respect them. But the bottom line should be, you never, ever sacrifice game design for marketing purposes. It just makes bad experience all in all. Marketing is one thing, game design is other thing. Game design should decide if it's fun to play your game, if it's really interesting to play your game. Marketing is just how well will it sell. If the game is fun, it will sell better. If the game is crippled with a bad control scheme, it will sell good, but it will not be remembered fondly. If you're not Nintendo, if you are not already remembered by the instant classics like The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past, all this stuff, if you're not Nintendo, be more modest when you try innovations in the control schemes. That's all what I wanted to say today. Take care, you beautiful people. Duck off.